Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this very special edition of The Consented Narrative. I'm joined with my sibling here, Quim. We are doing a book to film adaptation. We're doing The Invention of Hugo Cabret. Well, mine's stunning, probably the same thing. So
yeah, almost exactly.
So it is written by Brian Selznick, and we will be discussing the film and we will be discussing the book. Now, we won't discuss the plot in its entirety, because when we have a discussion, we tend to find that these videos do run a little bit long. So what we'll be doing instead is we'll be discussing the film between ourselves on what we thought, if we enjoyed it. Then we'll be discussing the book. Did we enjoy it? And then we'll be discussing kind of the differences in the plots and did we enjoy it and did we not. So that's kind of how that's going to go. Obviously, if you've not seen or read and you don't want any spoilers, your best bet is to turn it off as soon as we start discussing the plot, because when we discuss the book and when we discuss the film, we discuss it in very generics and we don't give away any endings. But when we discuss the plot, obviously there are going to be things that we are probably going to spoil for you, so bear that in mind. So first things first, we'll go with the film.
Yes.
So I watched this film for years. It's like a comfort film for me, and it follows this young boy who's got this little animatronic, who's like sat there, an automaton, thank you, who's sat at a writing desk, and his dad dies. He's left with his uncle as a clockmaker in a big train station in Paris, and his uncle then disappears, and he then carries on with the clocks, and you get like the day-to-day things that happen. You get like the lives of the people that are there quite regularly. And you see Hugo interact with these different people in small ways.
Also,
but not...
just to note, the film is just called Hugo.
It is just called Hugo. I do apologise. Yes, you're right.
When I went to watch it originally, I spent ages searching for the invention of Hugo Cabret, and I couldn't find it, and I got really confused. And then I realised I'd been looking at it all along, and I was just really stupid.
Whereas, well, you're not stupid at all, because normally when a book will adapt from, when a film will adapt from a book, you would expect it to take the title.
Yeah.
However, we know that does not happen. I mean, in this case, but also in Die Hard, Nothing Lasts Forever, completely different titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it follows this little boy. Well, I say little boy, he's like 10, 11.
I think he's 12.
Oh, 12.
I think it says.
I can't tell age. I hit a certain point and I can't tell how old people are.
I don't think it actually ever explicitly says how old he is, but I think it says how old Isabel is.
And
it's kind of implied they're
the same age.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I really enjoyed it. As like a standalone from the book is what we're discussing right now.
Yes.
We're not discussing how it interacts with each other, but as a standalone, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good, heartfelt film. It's something that you can just watch and go, oh, it's got a nice conclusion to it, which again, we won't tell you what it is, but it's, and you kind of get a feel for these characters, and even the ones that are a little bit harsher, you kind of like, oh, they've got a little bit of a softer side, like nougat. But so I thoroughly enjoyed the film, and it gets like an 8 out of 10 for me, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody. But what about you? What were your thoughts on the film? Standalone.
I did not enjoy the film as much.
Okay.
When I first watched it, I actually didn't watch the entire thing. I fell asleep, but I did watch it in the evening, so I was probably just tired as well. And then when I rewatched it, I think the reason I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would was because even though the casting was spot on, I don't know, I felt like some bits just ran a little bit long. Like when I watch movies, I'm a massive like nerd about pacing is the correct word for it. I almost said timeline for a moment, but that's completely wrong. But I'm a massive nerd about pacing, and if it's even slightly off, I feel like I can't enjoy it as much. So if you're not as like on that about like oh my gosh, I can't speak. If you're not as like on that as I am, then you'd probably enjoy it a lot more. But I think it's probably some sort of ADHD or something coming in which I can't pay attention.
So
for
with
more
the
than
pacing,
a certain amount of time.
what points of it did you think were just a little bit? Obviously, we don't discuss the ending, but what points did you think were a little bit could have dealt with quicker?
I think it's that some things were really long in terms of like the relationship between Isabel and Hugo. I feel like not going to say in the book, but I feel like there wasn't a lot of progress between that relationship in the movie. It was very much they met, they were friends, and then they were friends just for a very long time, and not much really happened between them. And I think I would have liked to see more sort of development there, because it means that their characters couldn't develop as much for me. at least in my opinion. Obviously,
Yeah.
you seem to have really enjoyed it.
No, that's fine. This is why we discuss things on the channel.
But I think as well, like, I only saw it recently. You know, well, I watched it like 3 years ago, and then I rewatched it because COVID got in the way of the video. So, but yeah, so whereas you say you've watched it for a while, so obviously it has some sort of nostalgia for you as well. Whereas that doesn't have the effect on me. I think the casting was brilliant though. I think even though none of them had a French accent, even though they were supposed to be in France, other than that, I think the cast for the old man was really good. I think, obviously no discussion of the ending, but I think his reactions towards the end were like really good and really appropriate. And Asa Butterfield has a soft place in my heart. Love him. He's great.
He's adorable.
His eyes, they stay with me. But like, I think that
even Jude
was...
Law as the dad for such a brief period of time. He's just got this really lovely tone of voice.
It's for like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
you know?
but this voice, you just like, you can see, you're like, he gets across the whole thing of being a great dad and what Hugo deals with when he loses him, and you just get that in a couple of minutes.
Even more because you as a viewer want to see the dad more.
Yeah, and
so tearing him away from you like that, giving you such a comforting figure, and then being like, no, never mind, not for you. It very much puts you in the place of Hugo, which I appreciate. I think also the way it was filmed, like the cinematography of it was very beautiful. And I think that's something that for an adaptation of the book is really, really important. And
because it's dealing with cinematography.
So if it kind of failed on that bit, it wouldn't be a very good film. I think I would probably rate it like 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd watch it again myself, but I would definitely recommend it to other people if they were into that sort of genre. But also my mind has been ruined by watching tons of horror movies and like action movies and stuff. So if that isn't something always happening, I can't like focus on it as well.
That's completely fair.
But
so have a go and let us know if you enjoyed the film, if you've already seen the film. So now let's discuss the book. Now, when I first got this book, I bought it both for Corinne and for myself because we were going to do this about 3 years ago, but COVID got in the way.
Yeah.
And so I never cracked it open until you were coming up to visit me, and I was like, oh, damn it, we really need to get this on. And then I realised that, like...
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful because it's just a lot of pages of, like, the story is in actual pictures,
like,
and illustrations.
Even the faces are so detailed and so beautiful. That's what strikes me the most about it as a book.
I mean, you've got the automaton there, but like what gets me is like, because when I first got it, I was like, oh my god, it's a big book, it's going to take me ages to read, and there is stuff to read in it. But honestly, I think this is one where I know I always recommend, you know, you can go to the library, get it on Kindle or hardback or paperback. I would definitely recommend maybe not necessarily Kindle. Because I feel like this is one of those books that it needs to be enjoyed in a physical sense as opposed to on a Kindle. But so the story itself is mainly told through pictures, but it has little extracts of writing, and it only took me a couple of hours to read. It's really easy read.
For me. It was so easy to read.
Yeah, and it follows Hugo, but this is more based around Hugo and the toy. I'm not going to say toy maker because he doesn't make he does make the toys, but yes,
he does. But,
so you've got Hugo the toy maker, and you've got I can't remember her name. Isabel. Yeah,
thank you. Is the little girl,
and it centers around these 3 characters, and you don't really get much interaction from other characters apart from
there's the old woman who's
no I'm talking about the person that opens the. My goodness, my mind has just gone. The person with the cinema.
A teen.
Yeah, a teen. So he's missing from the film, but we'll discuss that later. But yeah, so you get these kind of interactions between these characters, and I love the fact that Isabel and Hugo has this kind of, you know, well, why should I tell you my secrets? Well, why should I tell you mine? And it's like, and they don't trust each other, because why would you trust a really random child that appears out of nowhere?
I really think it's quite an accurate relationship between sort of young teens as well, because, you know, I'm only 19, so it's not been that long since I was a young teen.
It's been far too long for me, I'm just saying.
But it's the idea of, like, when you meet someone new and, like, you're kind of being forced together by the world, but you're like, well, why should I like you? What have you got to offer me? You know, it's very sort of like the bargaining with each other. And I think that I really enjoyed that because it gives you something to follow, and it creates a lot of conflict that can then be resolved that I really, really enjoy. Like, there's a moment where Hugo's fingers get broken, but that happens because of a result of like 5 different things that have happened previously between him and Isabel. So I think like that sort of conflict between them, and then ultimately the ending, is quite satisfying to me as a reader.
Well, yeah, this is the thing, is I love the unique way that he tells the story, in the fact that it's a lot of pictures, but like beautiful illustrations that you can't just flick through them, because they are telling you the part of the story, and then you pick up for a couple of pages of writing, and then it puts you back in the pictures and it puts you back in the story, so you can visualize it a lot better. Because I don't know about yourself, but sometimes when I'm reading books, I struggle to visualize what people actually look like. It's really weird. I can visualize like what castles would look like, what, you know, the homes would look like, but people, their faces are always like a blank to me when I'm reading. So unless I've got that visual being like, this is what they're supposed to look like, I couldn't even tell you.
I think it's the same with a lot of like book to movie adaptations, where in the book I will have envisioned a character like one specific way, right? Like while I'm reading, that is who I'm thinking of, and then when I see the movie and it's completely different to how I imagined, it really throws me, because I'm like, I don't know if I misinterpreted what's been said, or if they've just decided to like change it completely. Like it's so like odd to me how you can read the same description, like 5 different people can read the same description and then have completely different ideas.
But like with this story, it brings about, I mean, like Hugo's a lovable idiot at times, and sometimes you feel for the position that he's in, and I think he's very well written, and you genuinely start to feel for the people and the characters because of how they're written. And I think it's a really good book. I would definitely recommend this. I would say genuinely try and get it in paperback or hardback. I know we've both got hardbacks, so I don't know if it's 100% the same, but it cost me pennies on Amazon, which is why I was able to get 2. But honestly, I would definitely recommend it. It gets a 9 out of 10 from me. Probably because although I love the pictures, I was kind of at some points I was like, could you just write something? But I think the good thing about this is it's one that you can read to kids. It's one that you can enjoy as children. It's one you can enjoy as adults. This one doesn't have like an age limit. And sometimes you're reading a book, and you know I've done Roald Dahl in the past. You know I've done Dr. Seuss, for crying out loud. You know, and you know I've done sort of like the more adult authors. But this one I feel like can traverse any kind of like age, and you don't have to be a specific age to enjoy the narrative that you're being given.
I think as well, a lot of people are put off by reading books because, like, especially when you see something like this thick, you're like, that's going to take me years to get through.
Thicker.
I'm going to get... It's not competition.
I'm just saying.
But, like, you look at it and it's very intimidating. And I know that when I go into a store, like, say I go into Waterstones, first of all, it's so many books. Like, it's so intimidating choosing a new book.
I shouldn't go into Waterstones.
We shouldn't be allowed in general. But there's so many books and there's so many choices, and like flicking through, it's like you've got to read so much to try and get the vibe of a book. Whereas this, if I like pick this up on, because I'm like, oh, it's got nothing on the cover, so I want to look at it because I'm curious, like, why is it like this? And then immediately the first page in this, well, there's a brief introduction, but then, oh my goodness, the first page of the story is this. And that is way more intriguing to me than like pages of description, because, and like, if you're not one to read a lot, I think this is a really good book to get to.
I think mine is bigger, because that's the first illustration for mine.
Oh, way, Peg. It's not a competition.
Just saying, I'm the library. Anyway.
But yeah, I think it's a really good book to sort of start on if you want to start reading longer books, but like you're kind of intimidated by like the word count of it all, because it's so beautiful and it's got so many illustrations to help with that. I think I would probably give it like an 8.5. I'm really hesitant to give things like full scores, because then I feel like I'm going to go back on it and then I'm a liar on the internet, and that's, you know, I'll get caught by that. But I think the reason I wouldn't give it full like 9 or 10 is probably the same reason as you, where there's some times where there's like 4 or 5 pages of pictures and it's beautiful, but also it's a lot of very similar, because I think there are times where it tries to sort of mimic when you're looking through a flip book, or like if you're looking down like an old piece of film. And I think sometimes it just feels a little bit unnecessary. So I would definitely say it's really good and I love it and it's beautiful. But there are times where it goes on just a tad too long with the pictures, I think.
Yeah, that's.
But they are beautiful pictures, so I can't complain
but yeah,
too
so
much.
leave below in the comments if you have read and enjoyed this book. But now we shall discuss the differences between the plot of the book and the film. So the major thing that I will notice is, for one, I'm pretty sure they don't break his fingers in the film.
No, they don't.
They don't, and that added an element of urgency, and it happens sort of later in the book, but it adds an element of urgency because he knows he's going to get found out at any time when the clock stopped working.
Because with a broken hand,
yeah,
I mean, as you'll
know. Yes, I had a broken wrist, and you can hardly do anything.
Like, you're not going to be able to take care of clocks and intricate like machinery, and it really added this sense of like, oh no, he's really on a timeline to sort of complete this story before he gets caught.
Yeah. But another big difference is that, as I said, the book focuses around 3 or 4 main central characters, and in the film you get more of an array of the different characters that you interact with, you know, and the station master is there in the film, as opposed to in the book he's just kind of, until sort of like towards the end, he's just kind of like a looming presence that you're aware of but you don't actually meet.
And I prefer it like that because I feel like we're very much seeing things from Hugo's perspective, and Hugo does everything, like, he knows that if he is caught he will be sent to an orphanage, and that's established very early on in the book, and so he is terrified of the station master. He doesn't want to get caught, and so he doesn't know much about him as a person, what he really looks like. He just knows he's this looming figure in the distance. And so I love that in the book you don't really meet him and you don't really interact with him until right at the end, when he is like having a direct interaction with the characters, because it makes you dread him, you know. And like, I'm not a young orphan child in France, so I have no reason to dread him. But the way the book presents him, I think, is much almost spookier in a way, you know. And it's not like a scary book by any means, but it's like,
it gives you, as you said, it's the perspective of Hugo.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously when you're seeing the film, although you are seeing it kind of through Hugo's eyes, it's not as intimidating. And I know a lot of the shots are kind of like from below, so it seems they're a lot larger, but it is a case of, you still know that this is just a normal adult.
Yeah.
Another one of the big differences is the missing of Etienne.
Yeah.
And I did miss that because I watched the film way before I'd even read the book. I didn't even know it was based on a book until we started looking for book to film adaptations to do.
Yeah.
And the character of Etienne in the book, he is, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, so if I am mispronouncing, please don't say anything,
French,
because I don't care. But yeah, so he's kind of like a friend to Hugo when Isabel's, rightly, because, you know, is being a bit standoffish with him. And he gives money to Hugo so he can buy a magic book and practice the tricks. He was going to help sneak Hugo into the theatre so he can watch like films. He also is quite integral to helping Hugo figure out a big secret of this automaton. And yeah, in the film it seems like all of that was given to Isabel. And as you said before, it felt like their friendship is just kind of like when two people are pushed together. You know what it's like when you're having like play dates and the kids don't really like each other and they're kind of there by circumstance and they're like, oh, I suppose we should get along. You know, you get that in the film, but like in the book, it's just they do have that disagreement. And Etienne, I feel like they did miss him. Yeah.
I think he added a really nice element of, you know, even when everything seems to be against Hugo, when, you know, he's arguing with Isabel and, you know, everything's on the line for him.
And he's lost a notebook as well.
He's lost his notebook, which if you watch or read the film, it's essentially immediately made very clear how important this notebook is. But it's, you know, I don't know, I just feel like Etienne or however you're supposed to say it, just added this nice element of comfort.
Yeah. That
in this cruel, horrible world where he's going to be sent to an orphanage or he's going to be alone in the world forever, there is someone there.
That's just going to give you some money for a book.
I think he added this really nice little element of hope.
Yeah.
Which I think the film doesn't have that little element of hope because it makes Isabel all of it.
Yeah.
And she's there a lot. So with Etienne, it was this nice like glimmer. It was this hope that he would get out of his situation, that he would figure out all the mysteries of the automaton. And by transferring all of that to Isabel, I felt like it was, I don't know, it was less subtle.
Yeah.
And I appreciate a little bit of subtlety.
But I will say it was quite close for the main story.
Yes, the main story itself didn't change too
much.
It
didn't change at all. And apart from Isabel and Hugo being friends pretty much straight away.
Mm.
You know, it still had the little bits where, you know, the toy maker takes Hugo on because he sees he's really good with like gears and cogs and stuff like that. And finding out who the toy maker and the old man and the toy maker are the same person, and like bringing about, and like the conclusion is very, very similar.
Yes.
Which we can discuss because now spoilers, people should have gone. So basically they figure out that the toy maker is Georges Méliès, a famous film director that had made many films, and then he just kind of became disillusioned with his work, and then it all kind of got destroyed
during the war a lot.
Yeah,
sort of became unimportant to society.
Yeah, and so he kind of then becomes really upset, and this automaton was actually built by Georges Méliès, and it has his drawing of a
It's still from one of his movies.
Still from one of his movies that's signed, and that's what kind of sets Hugo on this adventure, and that's why the toy maker Georges realizes, because he sees these components, this drawing of this automaton, and he recognizes it, and he's like, how did you get this? What did you steal? And he's like, I didn't steal it, because obviously his dad found it in the attic and was working on it together with him.
Yeah.
And I think it's so like there's that really nice thing, and like right at the end as well, I do like that in both he ends up in their family.
Yes.
Because I'm like, you don't have to adopt this child. Like, do you know what I mean? You could literally be...
He is, at the end of
horrible
the day, just
people.
A meddling little orphan.
Yeah, he
so
is.
You could have
like,
just left them.
You could have just left him. And I liked that it ended quite well in the same... So they did take quite a lot from the book. They did add a lot to the film, and they did remove a main character.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say he was a main character, but like a main supporting.
I think the film kind of meddled a lot with the supporting characters, because, for example, in the book, it's one of, I think she works at like the cafe or something, where Hugo steals milk from.
Oh yeah.
And she's the one that finds out that his uncle is dead.
Yes.
And then she tells one of the other people who works,
and that's
in, like,
how
one of the
he's
places,
like, oh shit, that's what happened to my uncle.
And then he's like, oh, that's bad, because if they know, then the station master's going to know, and then he's going to come after me, so everything is put on like an urgent timeline. And plus his fingers are broken because his hand got slammed in a door when he tried to follow a girl home, which kind of understandable a little bit.
Also, you got to remember that like he was being brought up by his drunk uncle in the clocks of Paris.
Yeah. Whereas in the movie, it's actually the station master tells the cafe lady and the other guy.
Yeah.
So even though it's quite minor, they have the station master present like right at the beginning, and you see him disciplining other children, and he's got this like big dog that isn't present in the book.
Oh, I love that dog in
the
the
dog.
I forgot about the dog. I love him.
But yeah, so they do kind of twist around the background a lot, but keep the main plot, I think. And I think it very much depends on how attached you are to the book as to how much you'll enjoy the movie. Because with me, when I read books first, and then I watch a movie and it's an adaptation, I tend not to enjoy the movie as much as if I had just read it. Because it's the same with Miss Peregrine's Home.
Oh, you know I did that for this channel, and let's not discuss that again.
I watched the movie, and I was like, oh, this is fine, this is good, this is a good movie. And then I read the books afterwards. And when I read the books, I was like, I hate this movie. This movie is absolute garbage.
It's why majority of the time I'll watch the film, but like when you guys recommend a book to film adaptation, I'll watch the film first and I'll read the book after, because then normally I'm like, oh, I really enjoyed the film. Okay, so the book's completely different. That's fine. That's fair. At least I enjoyed the film. But yeah, but I think for the plot, how well it actually took from the book, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, because as I said, the main plot and the underlying theme remains the same.
Yeah.
And they changed a few things like the relationships and the characters and the background and everything like that, and they added more into the film. So that's why it gets a 6 out of 10 in regards to the adaptation itself. I feel like it just didn't... I feel like they needed to add a little bit more like characters
conflict.
And stuff. Yeah, and
like there was no conflict between, or essentially no conflict between Hugo and Isabel, and that was such a driving force in the book, that like
because she's trying to find a notebook and then lying about it, and then he steals a key from around her neck,
which
and
she stole from her godmother, and
and so then understandably, if you get stolen from, you get really, really pissed, but that wasn't there in the film. But...
And I think that driving force is what made me not really enjoy the movie as much, because I read the book first. I didn't enjoy the movie as it was, and I feel like maybe if I'd watched it first, I would have enjoyed it slightly more. So I would say, if you do want to read and watch this, watch the movie first. because I
Yes.
think you'll enjoy it a lot more.
Yes.
And then read a book. Try and get an actual copy, because a lot of the pictures are like double page spreads.
Yeah, they are.
And I just don't think on a Kindle it won't translate very well.
If it translates at all, if you can even get it on Kindle.
They might
But
not have it.
Try your local libraries as well, because a lot of libraries as well, what you don't realise is if you ask for a specific book, they will contact other libraries to see if those libraries have it in. So if you go to your local and it doesn't necessarily have this book, but you want to read it, they can contact and probably get it from somewhere else, so you don't have to worry about it as much. But yeah, so I would say you need to get it. But I agree with your thing that read the book after you've watched the film. Especially if you're one of those that like you literally sat there going, this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen. Like literally, yeah, I'm the worst for it if I've read the book first. But
I've literally just done a thing with my friends where we've been reading the Hunger Game book series and then watching the movies and just sitting there going, what on earth is that? What's going on there? Because it's not the same, and it means you can't enjoy it as much. And I just like critiquing things.
And as you know, I've done the first 2 Hunger Game ones.
Yes.
I will do the 3rd one eventually, and obviously
the
balance.
2 movies.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget I did The Hobbit, which was 3 films, 1 book.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if there's any book to film adaptations that you'd like me to attempt, remember I do have a really long book list.
You have to wait a little bit, but
I have to wait a little bit. But also, I do film these episodes very well in advance. So please know that obviously, although we're filming it while Quinn is up and visiting me, this will not be going live. So at the time,
for a little while.
Yeah, at the time that they are up here. So please know that if you do leave a book to film recommendation or a book recommendation for me to do, it is going on my list. I am aware of it. It just probably won't appear for a good couple of months. So please don't take offense if you don't see it. Remember to subscribe so that you're always alerted whenever there's a new channel. New video even.
No, I mean, if you want to make a new channel.
If you want to make a new channel. But also, thank you so much to my continued subscribers, because I have, I'm over 190 now, which is good. So we're getting there slowly. But thank you to continue support of all the views. And remember to always keep it contento.